to my computer. Here we go. I want to say good to see you again, San. We haven't hardly spoken since the last Connectathon. And Susie, I'm looking forward to this hour. Also want to just say a little extra homage to Susie because about a month and ago I was like, I got so much to do. I don't know, maybe we should postpone this Connectathon, because maybe aim for the next one. And Susie was, no, let it happen. Like the people will come. Don't stress. Everything will fall into place, and everything did. And it's been absolutely wonderful the way it has fallen into place. So thank you, Susie, for being the one to push me over the edge. But it's been enormously pleasant. So, Susie, I'll hand over to you and San.
Okay. Hey, San in Hogsback.
Hey, Sumay in Cape Town.
So, welcome everybody to this hour. I'm so excited to be sitting here. It is truly an honor. And even though I'm sitting in Cape Town, my home is actually in Hogsback, which is in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. It is also Nelson Mandela territory. So the heart of the oldest indigenous forest and the true source of the Rainbow Nation that we are known as. So very, very special spot. And I've come to Cape Town, to the mother city, for the Connectathon for a couple of weeks to see my family. So San is holding the fort in Hogsback. And he has, I'm going to hand you over to him. He'll do his own introduction. But our theme today is creating and living in intentional community. Something that's been very dear to me to follow my heart, and it has led me to Hogsback and led me to this beautiful space of Bijamara, this beautiful space, this homestead, this land in the forest where I truly feel that I have really found myself and a connection there that's been very, very lost, and finding myself in the heart of the forest. And San is part of this creation because he was there a long time before me as a gatekeeper to this land. So we're going to be sharing the next, I would say, we'll see about 45 minutes or so. We'll see how it goes, the flow, to be able to open up for questions at closer to the end. So once again, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. Thank you for joining our Connectathon this moment that was touch and go, as Tim says. But when you show up for yourself, it's amazing what you can show up for and what can be created. So as a team, very excited. San, I'm going to hand over to you to just give a brief intro of yourself, and then we will go into our conversation.
Cool. I'm going to skip the intro. There's like so many juicy threads that came up. I just landed in here and people were talking about the dance we dance together, the song we sing. And Tim was speaking about time. So I wanted to just speak to you a little bit about that there, and also about showing up. Life, reality shifts itself around us showing up. Nothing's going to change unless we show up. So celebrating all of you guys for showing up and making the Connectathon happen. This is forging new territory. This is how we create the future. Okay, so I wanted to add about the time thing. Recently, I went on a plant medicine journey with a plant medicine called Washuma. So this is San Pedro, right? It's from the Americas, and the shamans there use that plant to gain insights. It's a very embodied medicine. So what I found during my journey on this land, I've been here for 8 years now, been cultivating this relationship with the land. And today is not intellectual. It's something that I feel in my body. I can recognize the seasons. I can recognize the signs of the seasons changing. I can recognize the bird call in the morning, and the same bird call says goodbye to the sunset at night. So that relationship has nourished me in so many ways. Now, when I was on this plant medicine journey, what it does is it shifts the cognition, it shifts the awareness into more subtle realms. I can describe it like that. But in a very embodied way. I felt very present in my body. Listening to the land and the story of the land became part of the journey. Placing my hand on a rock, for example, was not like I had done previously. The rock had stories to tell of the land. It spoke about the people who walked here hundreds of years before me. It showed me imagery of the Khoisan cave paintings. These were animated. It showed the story of suffering, because this land here was where the settlers first moved through, and they encountered tribal cultures here, and there was conflict and resistance to that. So the story of the land is rich. I think that if we can listen into what the land wants to reveal to us, bring to surface, there's a lot of wisdom that one can gain, one can receive. And as we receive that wisdom, we so become better able at working with Mother Nature as allies. Okay, so the other thread I wanted to mention was the thing about time. And Washuma brought this thing up about time. You know, like our culture, I grew up in a culture where time is separated into the past, the present, and the future, right? And the past is like, we either have nostalgia and long for the past, or we are shameful or guilty about the past and we're pushing it aside and feel like it's something that we need to heal, right? And the future is something that we long for as well. We think about all the wonderful things that we're going to do in the future, or we have anxiety about the future, about all the stuff, all the pressures and all the things we need to get done. What happens is the present becomes orphaned, becomes malnourished, because we living in the past or we're living in the future. And right now, where life is happening, we seem to bypass that. We miss all the signs. So here's to bringing that understanding. Washima showed me that the past is woven into this present moment, and the past creates fertility for how we act right now. Our suffering, our difficult, all our challenges that we faced in our life, all the experiences that we have had, the journey we've walked, creates this fertility. It creates this compost that enables us to serve Dharma, serve our purpose right here and now. And when the wise men spoke and women spoke about the past, it was, I think they had that notion of the past, a past that forms, about time, a time that forms a cohesive whole. It's the past, the present, and the future that is in constant conversation. It's one continuous whole. Okay, Susie, so bit of a rant there, but yeah, we can dive into community, intentional communities. You know, I'm long on community. We're starting a little community in Hogsback. It's called Bija Mara, which means seed tree. It's part of a network, what I envision to be a network of communities that will gracefully navigate this great transition that our planet is going through. Anyway, that's the vision. So let me hand it over to you, Susie. Maybe you got something to add or some questions.
Okay, well, what I actually would love you to share, Sam, you have a lot of knowledge of communities around the world. I know you've traveled extensively and explored these places. And we've put together a couple of questions for each other, but this one particularly is why communities haven't worked, and why now should we work?
Wow. Yeah. So it feels like, okay, so from the 1950s or so, there was a big change, right? It's people are calling it the Anthropocene, where sudden increase in population, sudden increase in energy production, sudden increase in consumption. And what happened during that phase is that we started to become more individualistic. Individualism started to become the thing, right? So we had access to so much of resources. Everybody could have a clothes dryer. Everybody could have as much food as they wanted. They didn't have to farm communally, at least in the Western world, right? So we sort of forgot how to human together. We forgot these social skills that our ancestors had. I can speak about my childhood. I grew up in Chatsworth, South Africa, which is like one of these apartheid locations. And I remember very clearly that us as children, we'd move from one household to the next, and there'd always be like treats for us. If there was a shortage of sugar or flour, you just go to the neighbor and ask without any issues. It was like very communal. There was this sense of when somebody died, everybody would go to the funeral and they'll be hugging and crying. The women would mourn together. Whereas today, because of this individualistic culture where it's more related to competition instead of collaboration, it's about getting the best for myself. In that process of becoming so independent, which is, I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, lots of good came from us being able to develop these qualities that allowed us to express as individuals. I think it added to the diversity on our planet, the diversity in our culture. But in that process, we forgot how to hang out together, how to, just collaborate and share and not grab as much for myself as is possible. So I think one of the reasons why communities failed is because we lost that core social skill that generations before us had. The tribal culture was really good at that. Tribal culture was all about communalism. It was about, people would share their dreams in the morning, and my dream might have a message for somebody else. Right? Imagine us doing that now. That would seem weird, it would seem a bit kooky if we go get together and share dreams. So that's one part. We forgot how to sort of dance together and sing together. And I mean that literally as well, because that was part of our past cultures. We would dance together and we would sing together. And in singing together, our feels would start to feel into each other, and we'd feel more like one social organism, right? Now, we can also look at this in a more practical way. We bring the empire culture has institutionalized trauma. So it's like we come into this communal space where we have all of these unprocessed emotions, all of these stuck emotions. We've had all of these experiences that might have been challenging. And as a result, when we interact with each other, it's quite easy to get triggered and not know how to work with those triggers, not know how to resolve conflict in a graceful way. And more practically, not knowing how to make decisions together as a group, not knowing how to honor the diversity of perspectives as an opportunity to create something more resilient. So long answer to your question, Susie. I think it's just a matter of skills and practice. Our communities that fail, statistically, 9 out of 10 in North America failed, was essentially because we lacked the skills and capacities to human together in a harmonious way. And I think that's changing now. I feel like the communities of the past, they were like laboratories for us, and they've done a lot of groundwork. They've left us with so many useful skills, social skills, governance skills, how to coordinate better. And I'm really hopeful because of that. I think that we can move forward with less failure rate. I think Alex has a question. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. Yes, my question is, and it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. My question is about if you could say a little bit more about Ubuntu and about how that you didn't not just a little more, but say something about Ubuntu and how that relates to both what you're saying and what the world needs today.
Okay, cool. I'll have a go. And Susie, you're welcome to join in. So, I mean, the concept of Ubuntu comes from tribal culture. And tribal culture was it was how we coordinated in a communal way, and resources were shared. It was I can give you an example of Ubuntu that speaks to the spirit of Ubuntu. Like when somebody did something wrong in the village, instead of the village shaming that person or blaming that person, everybody asked themselves, it went into a process of self-inquiry. What did we do wrong to create the context for this person to do that? It takes a village to create an addict, So Ubuntu is, I am because we are, because you are. It's a spirit of togetherness without denying individuality, right? Individuality also is important there, but individuality is part of the collective. It is the social organism. Yeah, Susie, I don't know if you'd like to add something to that.
Yeah, I think definitely what I've learned in community for the last when I had my reset and sold everything up at the 2019 and went on a gypsy life until I found my home in Hogsback, I landed up traveling around and landing myself up in smaller communities, and different communities, different vibes, different versions of community, of sharing, of belonging. And my own experience of that Ubuntu, of really belonging, was something that I was seeking inside me. That where the me could belong to a we. And when I got to Hogsback, to be able to, it took me 7 homes before I was put into Bijamara, or where I had manifested and created this space, was the first place that I had ever really felt roots and something solid that was really expanding into something that was really real. And my nervous system felt it. I felt it because I believe that in community, humans are natural to want to belong to something, to have purpose in something, to feel safe. And arriving in Hogsback, the openness of San and the small community of Bijamara, of accepting me into it, was so special, and it was so foreign in my world of going from pillar to post, and then arriving at a space where, when people just get you, and I said earlier, when your vibe attracts your tribe, that feeling of being seen and heard and appreciated for what you bring, for your part of this Ubuntu, was so powerful for me that I just knew that I could put some worth in this. And I really have experienced on a personal level this community growing right up from the soil. I mean, San is also a pro at composting, literally soul work. It's from the soil, and for all of us, and I know we all have to compost first to figure ourselves out before we actually mushroom out. And this community has been something that has been really, really close to my soul, because my vision and my whole journey has been to create a heart-based community that manifested outside of myself. And when I came to Hogsback, the mission was to create this community. But you can only do it, as we said, Ferial, it's an inside job, where you are communing with yourself, where you are actually communicating with yourself, hearing with yourself, where you are one unit, and then you are able to show up for others. And it's a very fine line of these cogs turning, where you are working together in a community when it involves such a variety of different people. So this community has been very loud and clear of that inside work, and then this creating this home environment and this space. So I do believe one of the key things that San and I have with community is communication, where we're not even forced, but you choose to be there. Therefore, you choose to be transparent. You're choosing to showing up. You're choosing to be in a space where you can add value, but where you've also can step back and allow others to bring their value. So it's been quite a journey, and it's been really very, very special. And Sam's got a lot more experience in seeing other communities around the world, and the benefits of communal living. And I think the benefits, certainly as a woman, as a single woman, as my journey around especially South Africa, where there are very few communities where you can actually land and be and grow and create in your blueprint. And I believe my journey took me back right to the forest, to be right into the compost. It was like, okay, straight back to ground level. And that community world where it has a foundation of nature, it has a foundation of the soul of the land, the connection, communication with the land, is so potent. It's not just moving into a house or moving onto a piece of property. There is so much depth to it. And all my little communities I've lived around for the past 5 years before I landed up at Bijamara, I got so many valuable lessons, even though they weren't my spots. And as San says, going around collecting all this valuable information is naturally building oneself up to show up in community. So it's been very, very special and very real and very grounded and very nature-based. And it really is an honor to be in a space where I can observe that I've created this from my composting. It's been a natural, organic manifestation, and it's put me in the right place at the right time. I don't even know what to say because it is so big, and yet, I mean, there's just so much more to grow and living in community from the ground up. So yeah, that's my so far experience of belonging, feeling safe, being able to express myself now. My nervous system has landed and I am now able to create. I'm not alone. I am now within a space that I can grow and be held. And it really is the old way, isn't it, of community. It's a way of seeing the future, looking at the past, learning from that, and grasping it now and saying, okay, how are we going to do this now? I'm very grateful to Sam for starting the process and his journey of finding community from within himself and creating Bijamara. Sam, I know you fell off there and you're back on now. I don't know
Yeah, the joys of being in Hogsback, the power cuts off every now and then and the
I
internet
know.
goes.
How to live in community when you're busy driving around people's houses to say, can I come use your Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
I mean, that's the important point, it's like the resilience. When you live in community,
He's on pause. Okay, we'll see if he comes back. I don't know what he was going to say for the rest of the community, for when you live in community. But I do know that the communities that I have experienced through my life, there certainly have been certain aspects of functionality. Mostly, they have not functioned well. And coming to Hogsback, back to basics, I'll say it again, it had to be an inside job first because you've got to be home within you. My choice of the forest wasn't really my choice. I guess it was in the bigger picture. But it brought me into the lesson of the being, of the human being living together, of how we grow together, of how we connect together, of how we mushroom together. And that if we're to change this world, it is together with like-minded beings. And to get back to the old ways, to get back to the ways of tradition, to get back to the ways of connection, to get back to the ways of communication, to get back to the ways of trust. And it's so interesting to live in a mountain community, our own small community within the bigger community, and to observe how people live around you while we're are creating our own natural space. And I had no idea what I was in for with living in the forest. I'm a city girl. We talk about resilience, as Sam said, learning how to chop wood and fetch water. Never in my life did I think that my high heels would be changed for gumboots, for an axe, for a bucket, a basket to get herbs and plants. And we have over 50 plum trees, Burial, with still on top of that apple trees, pear, kiwi, you name it. And it is, I mean, I arrive home in Cape Town. My mother says, "Do you bring any clean clothes?" Like, I am this earth child, so much for being on stage with high heels and, little suits. It is a whole new world of going inside and then observing this manifestation outside in the land. And the big thing for me has been communication. Communication is so key in 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 any growth anywhere. Okay, I think Hogsback may be back. There's Hogsback.
With the bang, Susie.
With the bang. Okay, San, you better speak before you decide to go again. You are there. Do you have a voice?
Hi.
There we go.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry about that. I guess I could add a thread in about diversity and evolution. So, like, if you think about the Galapagos Islands, and Darwin studied the finches in the Galapagos and how the finches would specialize from different island to the next. Like, some would have wider beaks, some would have longer beaks for hunting insects. The wider, stronger beaked finches would be able to break the larger seeds. So what happened there was we had this ecosystem where creatures found their niches within it and they performed their function within those niches, right? So it wasn't like a survival of the fittest as such. It actually became a very collaborative environment. Everybody found their own way to contribute to the larger organism, social organism. Now, if we think about where our world is going, our world seems to be going towards what a lot of people are calling collapse, right? It's like we've reached planetary boundaries. We can't continue on this trajectory of growth. It's going to be very difficult to do that when we're getting to resource depletion, right? So our civilization has to go through some kind of change, some kind of transition. And the good thing is that human social systems and culture can evolve much faster than biological systems, which take millennia to change, right? I mean, to change genetics takes a very long time, but our way of living, our culture is something that we can start to catalyze. And I'm very long on this notion of communal living, people coming together, sharing resources, finding their niches within that social organism. And also, what's cool about communal living is you don't have to become a specialist in any one zone, in any one area of expertise. You cross-pollinate. What happens essentially in a community is you learning how to bake bread, you learning how to ferment, you learning how to farm, how to mill lumber, how to do plumbing and electricity and so on. It comes with a deal. It's a package deal. And what happens is people in that social organism, they have this willingness to share with others, because your well-being contributes to my well-being and the well-being of the whole, right? It's like it's embedded in the DNA of living in community, where we want a thriving social organism. All of us will become actors towards that shared vision, that intent of having a thriving social organism. Now, fortunately, we have like from this, we can be critical about the empire culture, but hey, it's giving us this, right? We connected across the planet, and we have this amazing technology that transmits electricity and receives it on another side, and we've got images and sound. So we've got something now that previous civilizations have collapsed many times, right? Easter Island, the Roman Empire. They didn't have this kind of technology. Right? We can now respond and coordinate to the challenges that we face on a civilizational level with so much more effectiveness because of all these tools we have. It's almost like, hey, guys, this is the greatest opportunity we've had for a long time. It's right here before us. Now it's a matter of, I love Schumacher's work. He wrote a book called Small is Beautiful, right? It's about making these changes, about simplifying our lives. We all have agency to do that, to reduce how dependent we are on a system that is clearly wobbling. We can make those shifts in our lives. And the invitation is open to every one of us. So let me stop there and see if anything else wants to come. I see Michael's around. Maybe Michael wants to add his voice to the conversation, and maybe Tim wants to say
Ariel's got her hand up.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And then we've got Alexander, and then Michael, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Susie. I just wanted to add to the pot. Firstly, we started earlier talking about Ubuntu, right? And so for me, when I'm thinking about Ubuntu and I listen to what both of you, San and Susie, have just been sharing about, then I almost get the feeling that Ubuntu only becomes authentic when you are able to say Sabona and Sikona. And what I mean by this is, like, when you speak about, you cannot ignore the individual in all of this, because Susie said it, the individual has to do that internal work, because you're a component of the whole that is very important. And finding that niche that you speak of, San, it is important, right? Because I think that life is so smart that it doesn't develop us or design us for just random things. I think we are chosen very specifically through our DNA lines into everything to Alexander, you like using the word evolutionary convergence, right? Where we are here with such a purpose, and it's coming into that, back into that flow of, how am I here to dance, right? What's my bake looking like? And to be able to do that, I think firstly, when we invite each other to Sabona, be able to say, I see you, right? I see those aspects and I'm calling it out in you, but then the responsibility of myself to say Sikona, which is, I respond to say, I make myself available to be seen. In other words, I do the work to be able to find that niche and to be able to show up in that niche in a way that I'm able to collaborate effectively with you, all the stuff that you two have both been speaking about, effective community. And so when I think about all of that, I think also about, San, how you talked now about technology. And I think sometimes I see within our circles, we have almost an aversion to lots of things because we've seen the destructive nature of much of this. But earlier in previous sessions, yesterday, we talked about how everything has a shadow and light. So I think it is, how do you use the best of what we have created, even if it has come at this cost, right? But now we already paid that cost. So the question is, how could we use that now and harness it, leverage it towards that society that we are dreaming of, that we are desiring to be a part of? And I think it is in the small ways as well. I thought about a friend of mine, just also that is part of our community in Living Cities Earth. And she called and she said, Fariel, I'm coming to the UK and Scotland, and she lives in Mauritius. And she was like, and I need your help with some stuff. Now, at the time that she's arriving, I'm on a plane. I'm just 2 days out of a plane. I'm going to South Africa. And I'm thinking, how do I help her? Because I could go, no, I'm packing for South Africa, because I think this is our usual Western scenario. But now going back to your thing of San knocking on the door and asking for sugar. So this is our latest version of asking for sugar, right? And it's like, okay, no problem. Come, I do my packing before. So organizing your life around that, because this is community, even across borders, across this kind of thing. And then, right, just come stay in my place, even when I'm in South Africa doing. And so I've experienced that in return, going to Cape Town, staying at Tim's place, and when I go now to South Africa, I will stay with my friend Patty as well. So what I'm saying is, like, I think there are these ways that we now have to reimagine what that community feels and looks like, because it's not always just going to look like living in a community in Hogsback, even though I desire that, and I'm going to get there. Not in Hogsback, but wherever else the universe wants to put me. But I'm saying it's also about this creativity now. I think of how do we use what we've got to get to where we know we want to be.
Thank you, Ferial. Alex, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead.
Just two quick comments and a question. First of all, San, if you've ever been to Japan, I'm sure you'd be Santan-san. Anyway, I'm just thinking about that. Or just San-san. Anyway. And I love Schumacher's subtitle to his book, right? Small is beauty, small is beautiful. A study of economics as if people mattered, right? As if people mattered, because you got to remind the economists, hey. But this gets me to the question I have for you. You were talking about living in community. Susie, in both of you are talking about this. This is what this hour is on. And I want to understand who's in community and who's not in community. Is this, the Yanomamo of South Africa will have the word Yanomamo to describe themselves, and it means human being. But if you're not a Yanomamo, you're not recognized by them. We do that all the time, right? We'll other, right? So you're in my community. Yeah, this is mi raza, as they would say in various places here in South America. My people. But then who's not? No, so who's out? And then you have, is this going to include also animals and plants? What about stones? What about ancestors? No, who's in community? And what about ancestors of all beings, right? So the question is, when you are talking about creating community, what are the boundaries and how do you determine them?
Yeah, great question, man. So we're speaking specifically about intentional community here, right? And that has a selectively permeable, well-defined membrane, right? So that membrane is defined. It is a social organism. It has a boundary. And we have our shared values. We have our shared vision. We have our shared mission and aims, why we coordinate together, right? So what's meaningful for me, for example, maybe I love the fact that I can walk past a magnolia tree blossoming in spring and stick my nose into that magnolia flower and get a great whiff of that fragrance, That's meaningful to me. That's why I live in Hogsback, and that's why I cultivate these trees. And that's why people who also find that meaningful, who share similar vision, will join within this, will become part of the social organism. So it does have a fixed boundary. And we can't configure things like, for example, like we sort of lean animistic, right? So we really include all the life that is around here as part of our community. We are part of that life force that forms this land. So we belong to the land. We use that kind of language, but that's specific to us. Now, maybe another community might form around a different ideology, right? Maybe they have a different set of shared practices and visions that they want to nurture. So there would be a boundary around that. They would say, okay, when you cross this boundary, now you have entered into our space. And when you enter into our space, here's the protocols. So Alex, that's the kind of community I'm speaking to. And then I like to speak in terms of communities, where we say communities are nested within greater and ever expanding communities, like bioregions, for example. A bioregion, this landscape around us here, will comprise of multiple villages and communities, intentional startups that now form a greater community because we belong to this landscape. So it's not so much separation, it's more about selectively permeable boundary membranes, where resources, energy, meaning, values can flow through. I hope that answers some of your questions. Susie, do you want to add anything there? No? Okay, cool.
No, all good. I wondered if Michael wanted to share. You live in community, Michael, and you're creating your world. And
I tend to live in total isolation because I prefer the forest to talking to people. But There are so many little threads here. And, about 6 hours ago, I was working towards intentional community, but we never got there. We got engrossed in the sort of working methodology. But my specific aim is the world's first ethical village. And I call it village, not community, because I'm looking at more permeability. So that, yes, it has core, yes, it has intention, yes, it has people who know that they live there, but anybody can come and go. And community and commune, there are all sorts of other words that, you know. But I'm intrigued by two of the things that you've mentioned, Sam. Oh, sorry, both of you have been talking about Ubuntu, because over here, it's what Michael Tellinger is doing. And I'm not convinced from what I hear that he's giving us a pure view, if you like. I think he's made it sort of mechanistic and financial. So, is it right to say that Ubuntu is a common practice in the indigenous world in Africa?
Well, I wouldn't even call it a practice. I call it a way of being, a way of
Yeah.
being together, So I don't know too much about Michael Tallinger's work, but I know he's used that Ubuntu name as probably part of the
Yeah.
entity he's created. And he's working within the existing system. He's trying to change the system from within, as I understand it, right? Rather than creating something completely new, where we're saying like, okay, this system is actually needs to be composted and something new has to grow from it. So I feel like he's trying to work with the system to change the system, the momentum of it, as I understand it.
Mm.
But Ubuntu
Yeah.
itself is
Yeah.
it's a way of being rather than any kind of
Mm.
particular mappable practice.
Yeah. What you said before just made me think, oh my God, I've got to go look into this. It's absolutely beautiful. If community understands, you stop and you ask, what are we all doing? Where is our responsibility in the collective? And, this is a beautiful way forwards. And so there's something there for me to look into. Small and beautiful was the other thing that you mentioned. Did you know that when he wrote it, um, he started an organization called ITDG, Intermediary Technology Development Group, which I actually worked with for a while. But he wrote to Leopold Kohr and wrote in the front of it, your copy, do you recognize your course notes? It was basically Leopold Kohr's work. And I think in terms of scale of community and so forth, he's one of those people. Breakdown of Nations by Leopold Kohr is a phenomenal piece that references Switzerland, as some people were doing earlier on this morning, because it's upside down. People get more responsibility. The canton works in preference to the state working. And he was very keen on this. And we were part of a television series together on all these things developing in Wales because he came here. He lived in Wales the last sort of 20 years of his life. So there's a wonderful sort of source there that we follow through into intentional community. And Tim was saying at the end of my session this morning, there are things here to carry forwards. And I think one of those is the scaling that you've mentioned of the nesting of community. Different things work right at different sizes. And that's something that we might, whether it's the next Connectathon, we get back together again. Me with more beard and you with less. It's kind of however that goes. But
Yes.
so there are fascinating things that are common to so many of the pieces of the conversations that we've been hearing through the last 24 hours. And I'm dying to know what AI is going to say about what you've been saying, I've been saying, Fariel's been saying, and so forth, because we're getting close to a conversation about communities really working as the foundation in the future. And it's just I love what you're doing there. Basically, I haven't got a question. Thank you. That's, yeah.
Yeah, just the scaling, okay, Janice, I think you want to say something. Go for it. No? Okay. About that scaling, Michael, it's like, we start local, right? It's local, place-based. This is where we figure out the governance, right? Democracy works on these small scales, but when you apply to nation states level, a lot of people get left out. There's a lot of discord. So what we can do is we can start from local and we can expand within our bioregional limits, within our landscapes. And then planetary scale happens. It's just a coordination mechanism from there, how we able to coordinate at greater and greater scales. We've got the technology to do that. We just need to create the culture or catalyze the emergence of the culture. And that's a grassroots thing, right? It starts from the ground up. We learn, we know what it will be when we get there. We'll learn from as by doing it.
Yeah. Now, the culture and the working practice are going to come from local communities. I'm absolutely convinced of that. When people begin to say and do what you were describing Ubuntu does, actually looking after each other as a group, whatever name we give to that. And, you know, so it's love, it's mutual support, and it's the belief that we can do this everywhere on Earth. You know, it's fantastic. But if we don't live it to the full where we're actually living, then it's not going to be a replicable process. Or it must be radiant, it must be fun. It's yeah.
San, I have a question for you. Do you think that maybe, just out of listening to the both of you now, that maybe some of the reason we're not able to implement very often what we can implement in small scenarios, we're not able to implement on scale, is maybe because is it that we're not creating learning mechanisms? And what I mean by this is we employ consultants to implement on a global scale, I mean, on a national scale, but it's like that work of doing it in the local community and starting to spread that and learning and almost making, I want to say in inverted commas, mistakes. And I don't mean it mistakes, but I mean learning, right? Because I'm sure from the work you do, it didn't just grow into your beautiful tree to begin with. You probably made some, faux pas there and learned, oh, I've got to do that. And I've got to put this compost in. So I wonder, is some of that the reasons why we're not able to, in your estimation?
Perhaps we have placed perfection on the pedestal and thinking that perfection is what we need to aim for. And we've forgotten that imperfection is very much woven into perfection. It's like being a messy human, making those mistakes. It's part of the perfection of life. It's part of why we exist the way we exist. And our culture has trained us to always reach for these ideals or some externalized concept of what perfection is, or what right is, or what the best is, or what good is. Whereas the lived reality is very different. I mean, I've planted lots of trees that didn't make it. And in that process, wisdom starts to get cultivated. It's not just knowledge. It's like I can take the knowledge and I can apply it in novel ways. That's how I describe wisdom, for appropriate to different contexts. So yeah, I think our culture, like in particular, the techno-feudal kind of movement now, it's all about perfection. It's like, let's become cyborgs and live for eternity and meld ourselves with the machine, so that we can become more and more and more closer to this ideal of what perfect is. But actually, we messy humans, we're going to die out, we get sick, healthy, sick, all these things we have to dance with. And it's part of the joy of living.
I want to share with you, I would like to share with you quickly of Michael, you talking about being this hermit of talking to trees and not people. I so get. And it's interesting in community where you are around, people are around you. You still have your sovereignty and you're still able to say no. You can still step aside. And yet you have this family of beings around you. And so I guess naturally, organically, without even knowing really, without past reference or anything, it's been a very organic, beautiful community we're growing. And yes, now there is dancing. So we make sure we turn the music up and we get everyone on feet on the ground and get wiggling. And there are family meals where everybody brings something and shares, and they catch ups. As I said, communication is key. Where the old ways seem to be coming back, we're creating together without even realizing we're doing the old ways. Because an ideal vehicle, all these cogs have to work together to make this engine, to make this vehicle move. And when we are showing up in our cog, in our role from that personal development journey and understanding the sovereignty, understanding the connection or remembering the connection to nature and showing up in community where transparency is totally, key, totally there, it is very beautiful to come from a journey of not belonging, of so many homes, of so much movement, to find a space where the soul just says, I am home. And with like-minded beings, that you know that the future is bright when you can just look at every day, that you know you're working together. And those who have a bad day, you love them and they go do their thing and they get rebooted and they come back. But the cogs continue to turn because this foundation of caring, of compassion, of connection, of family, of ecosystem is so organic and so real that I can't imagine living anywhere else now where things are separated. It's so, you talk about life being easy. It is so much easier when there are more of you that are actually in this creation together and where you can. And Sam's been amazing to, I've created the space where I can flourish now and be held. And he can be held in doing what he does, in putting this community out there and organically growing it and doing what he needs to do. And it's very powerful when people come together, just like Connectathon, all the threads that are going off now with people connecting, all the projects, everything that's going to be birthed from this moment, so much stronger, so much more grounded, so much more valuable to our future creation and evolution when it is together, as opposed to singularly doing it solo. Violetta, I see you have your hand up. Thank you.
Oh, it's lovely listening to this deep experience of a community. And I'd like to just raise a question. How long this community can be self-organized and can emerge without some sort of top-down intervention for organization? San, you mentioned before that democracy works until the groups are small. There is some ancient wisdom that says that a community should not be bigger than 50. When it grows to 48 to 50, one group needs to leave and create a new community. Probably this comes from the wisdom of how much can you manage. So what's the take of your community on that? How do you plan to evolve?
Great, cool question, Violetta. So the community is nested in what I call communitaries. It's a larger system that accelerates or incubates startup intentional communities. And from communities, you can have different kinds of governance systems that one can implement for their startup intentional community. Now, we love the ideal of flat organizations and self-organizing systems, but it's not the case here. I have executive leadership here, right? I make decisions and it's quite transparent, but I do it with a consensus-seeking idea. I'd go and listen to the voices of my community members before making any big decision, right? So prior to starting this, it was like, whoa, I'm going to have all my documents, my membership application process, everything really all lined up perfectly. And then life happened. Susie approached me and says, I need a place. And I was like, I had to go through the resistance of not being ready for that and trusting that life would configure itself, that I have embedded in myself the experience, that Susie, I could see into Susie's eyes that she's a mature person who's walked a long journey. And I had an intuitive feeling that, okay, cool, let me trust my intuition here rather than my intellect. So I don't advocate for flat organizations at the beginning. I feel like when you take executive leadership, you also take responsibility for certain things. And that's important, at the very beginning, especially at the very beginning when things are just starting. So then the core group starts to, Susie, for example, now she's been here for a year. I would start to say, okay, Susie, now you start to participate more in the decision-making process. We've got a new community member, Mona, who's joined us. And then so in time, we would escalate their capacity to make decisions. And maybe I'm a farmer, right? So I'm in the soil. Maybe not everybody has to say what crops have to be planted this season. Maybe I can take care of that. So it's filling our niches and also not being afraid to have a top-down governance system at the beginning. You don't have to comply to flat organizations.
And I know we're basically coming up on time here, but I want to make sure you have a chance to weave whatever threads you wish for your closure here. I just want to mention also with this issue here, I love the way you're addressing that, San. And nature organizes in fractals as well. So yes, there may be a limit of, well, Dunbar talks of 150 people before things tend to break up into smaller groupings. But you can have communities of community, right? So you can have communities, and this is what I write about as evolutionary learning ecosystems. So you have an evolutionary learning community, a community that learns how to learn in harmony with the dynamics of its broader environment, socially and physically and naturally embedded in nature. And so this is a thriving community, a healthy and authentic community. And then you can link these communities in a greater community. So there's a community of community, and this is the evolutionary learning ecosystem. And really, this kind of fractal embeddedness, I mean, how many trillions of cells are in our bodies? And they're coordinated, but there are 11 organ systems, right? And then within each of those, there are organs and so on and so forth, right? So you have this nestedness, and these are the semi-permeable boundaries of the sort that you were talking about, San. And I think there are no limits to this type of self-organization.
Really, there aren't, and like they're connected imagine networks of shared vision, right? I mean, like if I want to go visit now, so if I want to go live by the ocean and surf, I'm tired of farming and living at the mountain. It's cold in winter. Maybe I want to go surf, right? And somebody else wants to experience that. We now have this network infrastructure of shared vision where the flow of resources and movement of people is so much less restricted. Our world today does not support that freedom of movement. You have to sell your house. You have to buy. It's all these bottlenecks, Whereas in community, Guy, I've got a lovely cottage that I've loved and lived in for many years. Come use it. I'll come use your cottage by the ocean. Zana, I think Zana wants to say, oh no, that's a clapping. Okay, cool. Are we reached time now, Susie? What's up?
I think so. Anyway, okay. You'll all just have to come and visit us in our small community and eat some fresh plums and berries.
Drink some of my wine.
Oh, yes. So yeah, thank you, San, and thank you for this moment in Connectathon. Really appreciate it. So there is community. It is happening, and it's just we'll see how it all evolves. But there is light at that end of the tunnel.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, San. Thank you, everybody who was part of this hour. I'm going to stop the recording.